Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, joined by the two best in the industry in terms of breaking down injury news and analysis, Justin Fan from Underdog Fantasy and Mike Gallagher of Established Run. Gentlemen, we have an 11-game slate, lots of hoops, lots of questionable tags, no longer health and safety protocols, so very happy for that, very grateful for that. Justin, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
Doing well. Busy morning. We actually got a ton of news coming this morning. We're still waiting on a good amount to come out as well. So yeah, a lot to get into.
Yeah, Mike, you recovering from your week with Dank in Phoenix and getting some Smell the Roses time?
Yeah, I was a little hungover yesterday, but woke up early, got a little late start on matchups overall yesterday. But yeah, as Fan mentioned, like all those man, I just wrote up like all this stuff about the Rockets, and then those injury tags come in with KPJ and Wood. It's like, oh, I gotta redo it. So tilting.
Yeah,
but
the old Jimmy Butler gift there that Fan was imitating.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I mean, that's a perfect lead into starting with Jimmy Butler. So I'll start there, even though there's probably bigger injury spots on the slate today. Jimmy Butler questionable for Miami. Kyle Lowry still out with personal issues. Playing the Clippers team, who the hell knows who the Clippers are going to play, whether they're going to announce who's active or not, whether the rotations are going to be totally insane, who knows. But on the Miami side of the equation, Butler has returned, and it's led to a more condensed rotation in terms of number of guys, but also fewer minutes for some of the main guys that have been playing big minutes in the absence of both Butler and Bam before. What are your thoughts on Butler's availability tonight, Justin? And if he's unable to go, how do they replace his minutes?
Yeah, I think they'll keep it pretty tight. We'll see either Caleb Martin or Max Strus enter the starting lineup, and this is actually a good matchup because the Clippers defense that has been sputtering as of late. I think they're closer to 20th in defense efficiency over the last 5-10 games. So yeah, I think we see that minute ceiling return for Tyler Hero, where he can get to like 35. We were a little worried about his minute ceiling coming back with so many guys playing well, like Duncan Robinson, Strus, and Gabe Vincent, all those guys. So love his role if Jimmy ends up missing here. But yeah, we'll see. Like I said, Caleb Martin, Max Strus step up, and then Kyle Guy might get some nominal minutes, get to low teens, mid-teens, somewhere there. But it'll be pretty condensed, and Bam Adebayo will have a big role as well. His assist rate should bump up. His usage rate should bump up. He's had a solid role since his return. So yeah, I think we know that we've covered this Heat team, enough over the last couple of weeks when they've had guys in and out to know who kind of sticks out when one of their big guys are ends up out of the lineup.
Gallagher, any inclination on your end on Jimmy's availability tonight, whether you expect him to play or not?
No, I mean, they've been pretty cautious with him, but we'll see. Definitely a new injury. He had, ankles and knees and other stuff. So this is a new toe thing. And yeah, Fan covered most of it. I definitely expect Caleb Martin to start if he doesn't play. And you mentioned Bam. We have a 77-minute sample of him without Jimmy and Lowry, and he's per 36, 22, 13, and 6 against a defense that, again, Fan, which he always does, mentioned that, has been really slipping. And they've been really struggling around, actions involving centers and ball movement, which is Miami's forte. So I think Miami wrecks this Clippers team regardless of Jimmy. If Jimmy plays, I've got major garbage time concerns.
Do you think if Jimmy does not play, do you think Gabe Vincent stays in the starting lineup, or do you think Tyler Hero has a chance to move into the starting lineup to replace kind of that usage from Jimmy?
I think they'd probably still stick with Gabe. I'm definitely with you that it's a little bit more likely, but I think they're pretty comfortable with that role right now.
All right, cool. Let's go over to the Lakers, which has got to be the lead on this slate. Man, all three of the big three. That's right. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Avery Bradley, all questionable tonight. Russell Westbrook is also questionable as well for the Lakers. So, tons of if-then scenarios here for Los Angeles on the second night of back-to-back after losing in Philadelphia last night. Justin, what are your expectations for Lakers availability tonight?
Yeah, I think this has strong punt game vibes to me. Second leg of a road back-to-back. They're +8 right now. I think they can get up to double digits potentially. I would be shocked if LeBron plays. So the quotes from Bo yesterday was that there would have to be a significant change in how LeBron feels for him to have a chance to play. So he said that if there's a significant change, LeBron could play, which is not a good indication at all. We saw Anthony Davis, he looked pretty unbothered by that wrist injury, though he had some huge contraption on his wrist while he was on the bench. I could see them definitely being cautious with him, holding him out here. I don't have a lot of information on that Russ injury, sore knee. We just ran him ad this morning to the injury report. And then, they'll have 9 guys, I think, if all those guys end up missing, would be, huge roles for THT, Carmelo, Austin Reeves, and the Victory Cigar Camp Bazemore have to get back in as well. We'll have to see. Obviously, this is pretty straightforward. If LeBron and AD end up missing, Russ plays. Russ is a pretty strong play, plus 7% usage rate differential with those two off the court. A lot of moving parts here, though, so we'll kind of have to see, who's in, who's out to really evaluate who the value plays are around. Outside of like Russ, outside of THT, outside of some of these other guys too.
Yeah. And in addition to those questionables, Malik Monk's already been ruled out. They're still without Kendrick Nunn, of course. And then they don't have the two-way guys, the G League guys. Sekou Doumbouya and Mason Jones also ruled out as well. So this could be a pretty thin Lakers team against a fast-paced Charlotte team, which generally would provide a lot of value to be had here. And obviously the guy that most people would focus their attention on if all three of these guys sat would have to be Talen Horton-Tucker, just given what we've seen him do in the past in preseason stints, past last year stints when they were a little bit watered down in terms of guard play. So Gallagher, any inclinations on what we see from the Lakers tonight?
Yeah, this is Westbrook's quote-unquote bad knee. Had surgery on a couple of times, most recently in 2018, so that's something to keep in mind there. We know he's been rested before with this thing, so it definitely feels like he could sit out. Fans certainly covered all of the LeBron stuff, and AD coming off injury. It felt like even before he got injured with his wrist, it felt like there was a chance he would sit. So, as fans said, which he always does again, is that I think they might just punt this one.
Yeah. All right. Another, we saw a punt spot last time from New Orleans where they sat Brandon Ingram, Jonas Valanciunas, Josh Hart, Devontae Graham. Those three guys, with the exception of Devontae Graham, are on the injury report and questionable once again. The information kind of trickled in that Jonas Valanciunas was questionable as well. So I thought that was just like kind of a punt rest situation, but here we are again, and they're in a spot where they're actually, we've talked about this on our Established Run NBA podcast with respect to Portland and whether Dame comes back this season and what it looks like. That 10th spot in the West, like nobody wants it. Basically, everybody out there is battered and bruised and just kind of slumping through the season. And New Orleans is right there. They're still kind of in the thick of it. So these must be pretty legitimate injuries if these guys are all listed questionable once again. Mike, what are your expectations for New Orleans guys and who we see tonight? I know Brandon Ingram, I feel like, has been questionable for 70% of the games this season and played maybe 30% of those questionable tags, it feels like.
Yeah, me first. Fan doesn't get to take my points this time. Brandon Ingram didn't practice. Willie Green says they're gonna monitor him. I'd be really shocked if he played. Josh Hart also didn't play, had an ankle sprain that's legit. Didn't practice. More likely to play than Ingram. Still think he sits. You mentioned Devontae's back. Illness for Valanciunas. So we'll kind of see what happens there. I do want to add that Billy Hernan Gomez and Jackson Hayes played together and late in the game against Philly, and Willie Green said he did want to look at that lineup again. So probably wouldn't start them both. Would expect them to probably start Nikhil again. Garrett Temple, obviously Devontae Graham, Herb Jones would be the 4, and then whoever the center is, it would most likely be Billy Hernan Gomez against Jokic. And Billy Hernan Gomez is like, I said this in the last time, he's like the strong big man defender. They like Jackson Hayes is more of like a team defender. You're going up against Jokic. So it seems like a very obvious spot that they would start Hernan Gomez there. And then, you're taking out a lot of usage, a lot of ball handling. So we saw Nikhil go off 31 against Matisse Thybulle too. So really impressive game from him there. So looking to see if he can keep it going in a better matchup.
Yeah, and of course, Willie Hernan Gomez put up 29 and 10 in a spot start against Joel Embiid, who is superior in every single way to Nikola Jokic, right, as a defender. So you can pencil in Willie Hernan Gomez for like 40 and 20, I think, based on the way everybody expects the defensive gaps between Jokic and Embiid this year. So Willie Hernan Gomez would be the top play on the slate. You project him for about 75 DraftKings points. In this instance, it would be the tone I get from Twitter on everybody. Justin, your expectations on Valanciunas or any of these other Pelicans guys if they'll play tonight?
Yeah, so I think I'm a little more optimistic, I think, on Ingram than Gallagher. So Ingram
Yeah,
did go shoot around this morning. He shot around with Jose Alvarado, and the reports were he was moving around pretty well, and he sounded like a game time decision. So I would guess that maybe he's more likely to sit than play, but I think he has an actual shot to play in this one. So we'll see. So yeah, we saw like you said, NAW just go off, like with 33% usage rate, I think, that last game. I'll speak up for Gallagher because I know he was itching during that dink diatribe, and B just been barbecue chicken as of late. Defensively,
I got my tweet from last night right here. Yeah. That's crazy.
That first half, he just had no interest playing any defense on Hernan Gomez. Like really just looked like Will Chamberlain out there. It was just sickening as someone who bet on the Sixers. So we'll see. I mean, we know who the starters are. Devontae is going to start. If Josh Hart's out, then it'll be NAW. If Ingram's out, it'll be Garrett Temple, and then if Valanciunas out, it's going to be Billy Hernan Gomez. So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. All right. Other big questionables on the slate. There's still plenty of them. Domantas Sabonis did get a practice in for Indiana. For whatever reason, Indiana seemed to be willing to kind of bring guys back quickly from injury situations. That's been the case with Brogdon a bunch, and he just keeps getting re-injured. And so they finally had to put the kibosh on that. But Sabonis tonight, what are your expectations? Justin, do you think we'll see him back in action for India?
I think there's a good chance because, ever since like early mid this week, they were talking about him potentially returning this weekend. So I think it's close. I think it's probably like 50-50. They might be cautious, hold him out for one more game, and have him back next game. So we'll see. If he's out again, any interest in this center situation with Goga, Isaiah Jackson, are we kind of staying away still? Like the Goga minutes have been very volatile. I think he only played like 18 last game. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Gallagher, what do you think? This is your specialty, Oklahoma City Thunder basketball. So how do you attack the Oklahoma City Thunder in this spot if Sabonis is unable to go?
Well, I would assume LeVert gets put in the torture chamber. It was a little surprising a few games ago when we saw Aaron Wiggins get that spot against LaMelo. But I think it was more about putting – Ben and I talked about this a lot on Friday, and it was Miles Bridges who got the Dort. I mean, this is not the same situation. So I'd be really surprised if LeVert doesn't get Dort. He dodged Dort in the matchups last year. So we'll see. I think that's kind of an interesting spot. So, I mean, if LeVert's getting held down, I mean, there could really be some usage opening up for Goga. So, against Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, not as much foul risk there. Patients don't know a ton of fouls. I think it's a spot that you can maybe attack if Sabonis is out. I'll add, Sabonis did play through this ankle injury at first and then got shut down after. Obviously, that happens a lot, but he's had time to heal. I think he's got a good shot to play.
From the Oklahoma City Thunder games to the Houston Rockets games, I'll stick with my my expert in bad basketball, Mike Gallagher.
Yeah.
Kevin Porter Jr. on the injury report questionable, as well as Christian Wood for Houston. These kind of came out of nowhere. As you mentioned, you had to kind of rewrite matchups on this part. What are your expectations for them tonight in a fairly good matchup against Portland?
Yeah, really, really good matchup. Two of the worst defenses in the NBA. And Kevin Porter Jr. was sick yesterday and didn't get put on the injury report, and then they added him today. Concerning. Christian Wood also hasn't had migraine history. He's questionable. We'll see. Don't really know there. Worth noting, Josh Christopher is probable too. And we'll add, just with the Wood side of this is pretty straightforward. So we always go back to, like, is he going to use Daniel Tice here? And he's always used the names Joel Embiid and Jokic. And interestingly, like, the way it's worked out has, like, been against those guys, like, almost every time, whether it was Wood, getting penalized or Wood missing time. It's been crazy. But I feel pretty good, even against Nurk, that they're going to go with Şengün. Unprompted in the last presser, Silas was talking about how he just can't play Şengün with Wood, and he wants to try to find more minutes, but he just can't. So if Wood doesn't play, I feel like it's just naturally going to just give it to Şengün. They want to run offense through him and stuff. So if Kevin Porter Jr. is out, I could really, really be in a Şengün. Obviously, if KPJ doesn't play, I think Jalen Green takes on a massive ball handling increase. They do want to also, if Josh Christopher is available, he's probable. They want to get the ball in his hands more. So I would expect him still to carry most of that second unit role, maybe get a little bit of overlap. I don't think they necessarily would bring in DJ Augustine, which has been a thing they've routinely done here. So A lot of ways that guys could benefit for either one or both of those guys missing. And again, the matchup is ultimate here. We know the Blazers on the road are just horrendous. Losing Nazir Little is a huge deal for their defense. Robert Covington, we'll talk about him too on the questionable side. I think the Rockets really could score a lot of points here today.
Yeah, Justin, what are your expectations for? We'll keep it within this game as well, because Covington, who Mike mentioned there, is questionable as well. So Covington, Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood, the big names in terms of projecting playing time for these two teams. What are your expectations on availability for those guys tonight?
Yeah, KPJ was interesting. So he didn't practice yesterday, and their report was from Silas that he thought he'd just be available, right? So, and then that kind of carried on. He wasn't on the injury report, and he did practice. It did do shoot around this morning, and he popped up questionable, right? So, aside from the Silas comments, who maybe just wasn't aware of what's going on, it doesn't sound that great for KPJ, missing practice yesterday, not doing shoot around this morning. I agree with Mike that I would lean towards them starting Jalen Green at the point, and then maybe bringing in someone like Garrison Matthews at the off guard instead of starting like someone like DJ Augustine. Agree with Şengün there. Robert Covington, it's a knee sprain, I believe. So I would lean towards him missing another game here in this spot. And they're pretty thin at that forward spot already without Nasir Little, out for the season. So should see, there's literally no takeaway here from Tony Snell playing 30 minutes. Literally, obviously no interest in him. But yeah, you should see that same starting lineup again. Norm Powell back in the starting lineup last game after coming off the bench in his return. So he should play big minutes. And then, you'll see CJ Ellaby is doubtful too. So that thins them out. I think we'll see someone like Trenton Watford or, maybe like Greg Brown have to play a little bit more. Nelly Cat might have to get in like the low to mid 30s. They're pretty thin at that forward spot now with all those guys out. So, but I don't think there's any real takeaway. You're not playing any Tony Snell, any Watford, any Greg Brown. So, it's kind of concentrated among McCollum, Norman Powell, Nurkic, and Simons as it always has.
Yeah, the small takeaway I'd give there is just that the more Tony Snell minutes you have, the more usage for all those other starters that are playing alongside him, because Tony Snell just doesn't take up possessions whatsoever. And Rocco's a low usage guy, so it's not that big of a difference, but Snell is a much more low usage guy than Rocco even. Snell's one of the lowest usage guys in the league, so a lot of opportunity there. And you mentioned the bench, man, like Ellaby doubtful, Dennis Smith Jr. questionable, Cody Zeller out, Nance, Little out. They're pretty thin on the wings as well. So normally what you do is you just slide up Norm Powell, play him at the 4, and then kind of cover wing minutes. But you look and there's not really much there. There's basically Ben McLemore is the only guy that they would have any semblance of trust in. So you could see really, really condensed minutes from the Portland Maine guys tonight. Obviously, this is, the box score that Mike's got up here is a game that they lost by 20, and we still saw kind of upper 30s minutes for some of the main guys. So you can see guys pushing 40 tonight for Portland. Really good spot for their guys.
Yeah, I don't think I want to dip into like Keldron Blevins or anything like that.
No.
So we're gonna be pretty condensed if Covington and especially DSJ ends up missing.
Yeah. Speaking of,
just a couple things really quick. Yeah, it's like he's listed with a MCL sprain. It's only a grade 1, but that's usually a thing where you need a week off. So it was surprising to get that Q tag there. Yeah, and no DSJ, he's questionable. As you guys said, like they could really, really play Simons and McCollum in like the ultimate dream spot matchup. Big minutes here. They would pretty much just cut out, the backup point guard minutes there and just really up their ball handling. We saw Simons kind of lose a couple minutes in rotation because they went longer with DSJ a couple times. So that would make me feel really good about Simons getting, upper 30s too, and a matchup I absolutely love.
Yeah, another team that's willing to go really tight on the rotation, Charlotte. Kelly Oubre is questionable there without Gordon Hayward already. They're a team that we've seen through the health and safety protocols portion of the season. They would go and play like 7-man rotations, 7.5-man rotations, just really, really, really tight. Without Gordon Hayward, last time out, Kelly Oubre got super hot. They scored almost 160 points against Indy. It was just totally insane. If you take Oubre out of the mix tonight, man, things get pretty potentially tight here for Charlotte. So, Justin, what are your thoughts on Oubre's availability? And if he is unable to go, how are they going to replace these minutes without Hayward there as well?
Yeah, I will lean towards him playing, but I think there's definitely a risk here. We haven't like the Hornets. We just don't get a lot of information from generally. There wasn't any post game comments that I saw, and then Borrego, I haven't heard anything from him either this morning or anything like that. So we're just kind of relying on the PR account to give us updates. But yeah, Uber played 35 minutes off the bench Wednesday. Usage rate around 25%. So big minutes, big role to fill if he ends up missing out. I would think Borrego goes with a 7-man rotation in this spot. Maybe it expands if this one blows out, if the Lakers end up sitting a lot of their guys. But assuming like a normal game environment, we'll probably just either starting 5 plus PJ Washington and James Bouknight off the bench, right? I don't think he really wants to dig into Nick Richards or Ish Smith, who he would have to go to. The Lakers, they're not playing that big of a lineup. They're only like real big-ish center is Dwight Howard, and you have AD and Plumlee with those minutes. So, I would think it's a 7-man rotation and then big minutes for LaMelo, Rozier, Bridges, and Cody Martin. I mean, those guys just have huge minute ceilings. It's just a little iffy, though. Like, I do think, like I said earlier, this kind of has, like, pack it in vibes for the Lakers where they just kind of mail it in and those guys sit. So, the minute ceilings might not get realized if this one ends up blowing. So we'll see.
Yeah. The other thing that I'd note on Charlotte is I think if they had to choose an 8th man just on neutral matchups alone, I think it would be Ish before JT Thor. But I think this matchup in particular would probably make it more JT Thor than Ish. Kind of a tough.
So I looked at JT Thor's game log. I don't think he hasn't played like non-blowout minutes in a long time.
No. That's what I'm saying. I think they like Ish as an 8th guy more than Thor, but I think this matchup because the Lakers don't play super big, but they don't play anybody small, really. Yeah, and Ish would really have a hard time, I think, defensively, which again, all of this could be a total non-factor if the Lakers just don't play their guys. And then the Hornets can play kind of whoever they want here. But Gallagher, what do you think on Uber? Do you think he's going to be able to play tonight?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I'm with you too on Thor over Ish for that last rotation spot if they do opt to use it, which they may not. Matchup wise, I'll add. I mean, LaMelo's going to guard one of these crappy guys, so you're not looking at foul risk against a team that's ranking near the top in at rim defense, and we've seen LaMelo be more aggressive. We've seen him up his shots in the paint in the last few games, which is really lovely to see there. Obviously, the minutes that triple-double monster game. Really like LaMelo kind of in the spot here. Same with Miles Bridges as well. The team that's so vulnerable around the rim, especially if AD doesn't play, won't see any really tough matchups there. I think both those two guys could really put up huge numbers in the spot.
That is the next step in LaMelo's really, really strong evolution is just using his size more effectively to continually get shots at the rim. He uses his size to set up a lot of other shots for other people, but I think that finishing at the rim is the thing that kind of can take him to a really strong next level. But yeah, man, they are fun offense when he's rolling, and they should be playing tight tonight. We'll see what the Lakers do on their side if they can keep the game competitive. Some other small questionables to keep an eye on the slate. Josh Jackson is questionable for Detroit. Don't think it makes too big of a difference with Rodney McGruder getting thrown into the rotation as well. The bench minutes have been a little bit more spread of late. We haven't seen the Pistons go really, really heavy, but they're also playing the Magic. And so some of these times when you get these two weaker teams together, sometimes you can get condensed minutes here. You see there, Josh Jackson only played 6 minutes last game, and they were pretty much able to handle that with Frank Jackson back. So
he got ejected, right? That game.
Yeah. But point being, like, it's not hard for them to replace the minutes, right? Like they have plenty of bodies with Frank Jackson back in and Magruder in the rotation.
One question I have here: when do you think they'll make that flip and start Killian over Corey Joseph? Is it tonight? Is it Is there a couple more games? Like, when do you think that? They
Mike, what are your thoughts?
You talked about
the coaching comments there from Casey.
Yeah, I think they like it, man, because he's been playing significantly better in that bench role. So I think I'd just stick with it, especially with the way Cade's been. Like Cade's been crazy. I mean, the minutes are insane. Like I looked up a lot of his stats. He's like turning into an alpha. 18 drives per game. He's third in touches in the whole league over his last 3 games. 13 potential assists per game. I mean, this is like straight like 10K, 9K player stuff from Cade right now. So I know it's a small sample, but he's really, really turned it on role-wise here. So I think keeping Killian off the bench is good. Let him kind of anchor the second. We've seen coaches kind of really lean into that where, they just let their younger player, or obviously Cade's young too, but Killian could just kind of just handle that second unit and run it. Like even like they've done that with like Eric Bledsoe with the Clippers. So I think they're kind of similar, and they're kind of similar a little bit. Killian and Bledsoe just to a small degree, but I think it makes sense to just keep them there.
Yeah, Cade was just 6K on FanDuel like a week and a half ago, so clearly has blown that price tag out of the water. Some other smaller questionables. Trent Forrest is questionable for Utah, but let's talk more importantly. Donovan Mitchell got the original questionable tag and then kind of was ruled out pretty quickly thereafter. So no Donovan Mitchell, no Rudy Gobert. Once again for Utah, in the absence over the last few years, we've seen Mike Conley benefit. We've seen Joe Ingles benefit more so last year than this year with Ingles. The rates have not been as strong this year in the absence of Donovan Mitchell for Ingles, but we've seen those guys along with Clarkson and Bojanovic take on like a bunch of the usage. Whiteside's been playing a ton in the absence of Rudy Gobert. They do not have a lot of confidence in the bigs behind him, especially Azubuike, who's just like not been able to get on the floor even when he's been available. So what are we thinking tonight for Utah? Is it once again a pretty tight rotation with these main guys benefiting from Mitchell and Gobert? Justin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of know Clarkson's, his usage is off the charts. It's a little disappointing. His minutes don't quite get up there. They have all their main guys back outside of Conley and Gobert. So he's going to be kind of capped at like 31 minutes. Would love him to get to like 33, 34. I think he probably should have played a little bit more in that Phoenix Suns game, honestly. So, yeah, I mean, Whiteside's playing massive. He played 34, 35 minutes despite probably being the Suns' third best player that game. He made some just horrendous mental mistakes down the stretch that may have cost them that game. But yeah, I mean, Azubuike got a DNP-CD. Like you said, they don't have much faith in him. So he's going to continue to play big minutes against a bigger front court here in Jaren Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams. So he's kind of locked in. So yeah, we like Whiteside, Clarkson. You got, Conley's a guy we've kind of been back and forth with. He's been a little dusty, a little bit unreliable, but he did come through in a tougher matchup against CP3 with 33 FanDuel points last game. Where are we at with Conley, with Bogdanovic? He kind of laid an egg too last game. Where are we at with those two guys?
Yeah, I'll add Bojan's got that avulsion fracture to his non-shooting finger, and he hasn't shot it well in the last two games. So I don't know if that's affecting him or not. Did obviously have a bad matchup kind of in those spots here. So kind of a mixed bag of Cam Johnson and Mikal in the last game. I really like Bojan. If you could erase that avulsion fracture concern, I think he smashes. He put up 24 against the Grizzlies in the last game. They didn't put Jaren on him too much. They put Jaren a lot on Royce. So I think Bojan could really put up a big number. I know Conley's got the Memphis narrative here. I'm so discouraged by Conley. I hate he doesn't drive anymore. His assists have been a little bit better without Donovan. So I mean, people are probably going to lean into the Conley narrative, but I think Bojan is a guy that I could see really smashing here.
Yeah, the price tags on these guys have all been a little bit elevated on DraftKings, a little bit softer on FanDuel. So you've been having to kind of play price tags on them. And again, against Memphis, a tough spot tonight as Memphis tries to create some more separation between them for the 3rd and 4th seed and get their revenge from last year's playoff exit. In terms of other injury situations to note, Nerlens Noel, questionable for the Knicks. I don't think there's too much to cover there with the Knicks center rotation, so we can kind of move on to the situations where we're getting players back into the mix. We talked about Devontae Graham for New Orleans. We can talk about Grayson Allen and Wes Matthews for Milwaukee. Those two guys, really shouldn't have a huge impact on things. But what it has done is, because of Budenholzer's affinity for playing Wes Matthews, is it's really impacted the minutes ceiling on Pat Connaughton, on Dante DiVincenzo, and Grayson Allen when Grayson Allen's been available as well, Allen returning from suspension. Those guys being available, I think it, once again, not only does it remove the secondary pieces for Milwaukee, but I think low usage guy like Wes Matthews in that starting lineup is helpful and useful to guys like Giroux and Giannis and Middleton. When they're all playing together, it's hard to find DFS value between them because they've been, staggered throughout the year in terms of their availability. But what are your thoughts on the return of Grayson Allen and Wes Matthews tonight, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see it condensed. I think Grayson Allen, Wes Matthews, Pat Connaughton is going to go back to the bench, obviously. So we'll see Grayson, Wes Matthews, Pat Connaughton, Dante DiVincenzo. Those guys just soak up a lot of the wing minutes, and you'll get some of these periphery guys kind of knocked out. So I don't think there's a ton of takeaways. Like you said, there's some. It squeezes a little bit in terms of the usage of bumping some of these lower usage guys out alongside Drew and Middleton and Giannis. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton.
Do you think DiVincenzo is going to stick around upper 20s now, or with these guys back, or do you think that the need to play all of these guys kind of keeps his minutes in check into the low to mid 20s, and that they're just going to, he got up to 26 and 28, I think, the last 2 games.
Yeah.
So do you think like we start to get more of the normal Dante DiVincenzo stuff, or do you think this is going to be a competition for playing time with these other wings?
Yeah, I think it's a competition. I have him more towards like mid low 20s. I think I'll check, but like 23, 24 was my initial projection for him. But yeah, they're getting some bodies back for sure. So no need, I think, for him to go to 28 like he did recently.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right, Gallagher, did I miss any injury notes that you wanted to tackle before we get out of here?
What did I want to? You were saying something on another team that I wanted to talk about. Just Memphis really quick. No Tyus Jones again. I think that's noteworthy. And we have to talk about Desmond Bane, which I will in a second. But yeah, I mean the thing about no Tyus Jones, every single night John Morant's going over 37 minutes.
Yep.
He's going to play a lot here. I expect his ball. He's going to be really, really busy with the ball in this game with the way that the Jazz kind of take away secondary kick out passes. Like their defense is really set up for players like Ja to smash. So we saw him actually struggle in the last game. I saw a little bit of Royce O'Neal, but I expect the usage is just absurd. I mean, Ja could just break the slate really every time without Tyus behind him. And then we do have to add the Jazz took Udoka Azubuike over Bane, and they were linking Bane to being drafted by Utah at times. So the old Desmond Bane draft narrative, we saw Bane's minutes hit pretty good as he returned there. He wrecked Donovan Mitchell the first time they played. Obviously, Mitchell's not playing here, but whoever they put on him, if it's Ingles or Conley or whoever, I think Bane could really take advantage. So I expect one of Morant or Bane to put up a pretty big number here. Against the Jazz defense, it's been really, really struggling. So kind of a boring injury note, but we have to hit Desmond Bane pre-draft narrative whenever we get opportunities to.
One more situation we should hit on real quick is the Wolves.
There we go.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. So D'Lo, didn't return last game with the shin injury. Had a lot of people in the betting space tilted because they were on like his overs, and he was just like about to hit like over threes or something like that. And then obviously Patrick Beverley has been out. The reports of Beverley have always been like he's close. He's like about to return, but he hasn't yet. So second leg of back-to-back makes me lean just generally towards Beverley being out again, and then a guy suffering an injury on the first leg of back-to-back. I generally lean him being out on the second leg of back-to-back. So if that's the case, opens up some nice minutes for Jalen Noel. Malik Beasley is a total wild card. He had ample opportunities last night against the Warriors, but just horrendous shooting and kind of shot them out of that game at some points. So what do we think about this Wolves situation with Russell and Beverly kind of in the air?
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I think if you want to play Devin Booker, and Devin Booker's been crazy good. And just a quick side note, Monty Williams said that because we've seen Devin Booker spiking usage, and he said part of that is because Chris Paul thinks and recognizes Booker's so hot, he just wants to get on the ball, which is crazy. I mean, you have Chris Paul who's routinely organizing one of the most efficient offenses in the NBA over the last few decades. For him to do that is just a really, really testament to how much Booker's balling. So my point I'm going to make is if Beverly's out, that almost certainly means McDaniels, who has a lot of length, is going to be on Booker, which is a spot that could make it a little tougher on him. Whereas if Beverly plays, it's probably going to be Anthony Edwards. We saw Anthony Edwards guard him in the last game. We saw Anthony Edwards guard CJ McCollum. Actually did a pretty good job there. So, I think we'll talk more about on the DFS show too, but that's something to think about. But yeah, as you mentioned, Jalen Noel's been a baller, man. He is straight iced Malik Beasley. Low-key most improved player that most people don't know about. I think he's been awesome. Taurean Prince also a little bit of a disappointment after, but McDaniels didn't get into foul trouble. Played pretty well last night. Overall, I thought he had a pretty big impact in the game. And then also, if those guys don't play, D'Angelo, that means Ant's going to see Mikal. Mikal wrecked Ant in the last game. So you're talking about a team. They couldn't score. They had 98 points or something the last time they played, and Karl-Anthony Towns had 35 of them. So it will be, if he doesn't play D'Lo, it's going to be just feed the ball to Cat the whole game. So I'd really like his upside, gets the matchup against Biyombo, which I think he could really exploit.
Yeah. And what we've seen from Phoenix in the absence of DeAndre Ayton and Jay Crowder and JaVale McGee and Cameron Payne is that they've had to play tighter rotations. Their main guys have gotten up into the, close to 40 with Booker and CP3. We've seen Booker going nuts with that amount of playing time and that kind of volume. That could inspire, again, if Minnesota had, a situation where they were without Dar and without Beverly, you could see tighter rotation minutes from Minnesota kind of responding to the tight rotation minutes from Phoenix. If they can keep this game competitive, it's one of those spots where you could see all of the main players get up into the upper 30s. So just be aware of that in terms of
we worried at all about the spot and second leg back-to-back for them.
For sure.
Yep.
Definitely concerning. Absolutely. Especially if, you get in a situation where their best perimeter player creating offenses against one of the best individual one-on-one defenders in the league in Mikal Bridges. So definitely a spot to be worried about, but one of those spots where if you're playing Cat in DFS tournaments, because you think he's going to soak up a ton of usage and different stuff, you probably want to consider CP3 or Booker on the other side of that. Just because if Cat's really going off and keeping this game competitive in a way, those guys are probably playing monster minutes based on what we've seen of late.
I think that's a clear way to attack Minnesota is through Cat. I mean, you saw Gallagher pointing out, Mikal being on Anthony Edwards and Cat drawing the combination like Biyombo and Jalen Smith. That's the Suns, they're running like Ish Wainwright and Jalen Smith, and it's not great, great, Bob. So
yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it. We've gone through all 11 games, the injury reports that we have. There's still plenty of injuries waiting to be determined. So make sure you're following Underdog Fantasy's NBA account for all of the latest news and information. Justin, thank you for joining us once again on this Friday. Hope you have a great weekend. Mike Gallagher, is it you and I on the show?
Yeah, baby. Ready.
All right.
Yeah,
we'll be bringing the fire.
I was ready to plant Kevin Porter Jr. for my weekly Friday KPJ.
You can't give away the milk for free, Gallagher. These people on YouTube, they pay for nothing.
Well, I'm not doing it now. I'm not doing it now. So
okay,
you got to
good.
tune in.
Yeah. So get behind the paywall, and you can find out all the goodies over at Established Run. So best of luck in all the games tonight. Enjoy the NBA tonight. Have a great weekend, and we will see you guys again on Monday. Take care, everybody.